Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. I keep saying this, but this has been the weirdest August I think we've ever had in Buffalo, because usually I'm complaining about, the fact that it's 85, 90 degrees and really humid. It's been rain. It's like spring conditions. It's been raining. It's been like 70, 70. Like, I love the temperature, but the rain, it's really weird. And I mean, obviously, I would rather have my weather conditions than what's going on, the tragedy that's going on in Hawaii right now. I mean, it's, the stuff that you're hearing there is just. I mean, it's really just.
Houston's on fire now too, and I lived in Houston, and I never saw it on fire. So
that whole part of the country, I will tell you, me being down in visiting my sister-in-law back in July, it's usually what we refer to as the wet season. Mm-hmm. It rained maybe 2 times while we were down there. Normally we're dodging buckets, and it's us up here and where we're at, right, Russ? Right. in this neck of the woods, that seems to be getting the tropical rains of late. So I mean,
Vermont's
a climate thing, but it's noticeable. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah.
So there are fires raging in Houston, you said, Russ?
Yes, northern Houston. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get started with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so I know there's things that go on in the NBA that I am unaware of because I'm not a big NBA fan, but, I heard about the James Harden situation where,
he's getting
paid, but he doesn't want to play for the team. He's demanding a trade, and the Sixers went through this before with Ben Simmons, and I just look straight at Adam Silver. I don't look at Daryl Morey, the GM. He did his job. He signed the guy. I don't even look at the player who's definitely got issues.
The player opted in at the end of the day. He opted in.
I look at the league. I look at the league because the league allows this. And any league that allows their players to basically just sign a deal and then sort of renege on it and get themselves traded to wherever they want to on their whims. This is twice Adam Silver's had a chance to do something about this, and so far he hasn't, and really should, because I think this is to the detriment of the league.
Kevin, I mean, honestly, I'll express my thoughts on James Harden in a minute, but I mean, really, I told this to Russ. A lot of people complain about the NHL and the fact that they don't emphasize their star players, and that's maybe to the detriment of the sport. Well, if there's an argument against that, look at the NBA. They pump up their stars, and in that league, the stars rule, and they are unaccountable to anything, and even contracts.
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, always with the good comes some bad, and when you sort of give the keys to the car to the players, which the game is the athletes. I mean, I'm not diminishing the importance of the logos because they are important, particularly in the NFL and to some of the historic teams in the NHL. But you got to just accept that. I mean, we see it. It's not just in sports. We see it in, in movies and basically in all entertainment. I mean, you're right. What are we complaining about now is how much the tickets cost to go to concerts. You and I have discussed that, recently. So, I just think that's going to happen when you're dealing with unique talents, and you allow them to have the freedom that they probably deserve based on the fact that we're paid to watch them. This stuff's going to happen, and I don't know any other way around it.
No, this is the thing. If this was the first incident with James Harden, it would be bad enough. But remember, this guy ate himself into oblivion in Houston and refused and essentially, forced his way out of Houston because, he's a disgusting example to set to other people when it comes to professional sports. If somebody is paying you $35 million, you say thank you and try your best. But these entitled guys, especially in the NBA, but it's not exclusive because there are other people in other sports. I don't understand their value system. They figure they've got the talent and they can do whatever they want. And there's always going to be some sucker to pay more money to them, like with Kyrie Irving and the stuff that he's pulled. I don't get it. I don't understand.
I always say this, Kev. If the players want that much control, start your own league. There's never been a players league that has ever existed for any more than a year or 2 years. It doesn't work, and there's a reason it doesn't work.
Yeah, they don't want to be real partners. I mean, that's all one of the misconceptions. I understand that, but the other thing is, it's still like I think going after Harden is certainly acceptable. I mean, just for the reasons that Mike laid out. He has a history and so forth. But all I'm saying, it's a small minority of the stars. Most stars do behave.
Sure.
They adhere to their contracts.
Right.
So you're just always, I don't care what business you're in, you're going to have a small group that's going to cause some issues, and you're just going to have to deal with it. It's the bad that comes with the good.
And again, it comes down to if it's the behavior, if there's no rails in this circumstance, or it's just I just want to be rid of this problem. I mean, it's the old story: the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? And that's basically what James Harden is doing here. He's just he feels, and for anybody who sort of believed, this relationship that he and Daryl Morey had with one another in this circumstance. Also, it's a bit of there's also a bit of hubris on his part too, and the fact that sometimes you don't have that sort of insight to realize, hey, you are not the same player you were when you were 28, and the league values you at a different point. And the fact that the Sixers, who are trying to find some sort of commiserate value for him, the other teams know that. And the Sixers did exactly the same, really in many ways, exactly the same thing with Brooklyn, waited them out, and then got rid of their unwin, got rid of what was unwanted to them.
Well, Anthony,
and then this is what occurs. But he's done it twice now. Obviously, he did in Houston, and obviously he did what he did with Brooklyn in order to get his way out. So now it's twice now that this behavior has been basically, has gotten it for him. And it goes as far back also as Jimmy Butler too, what Butler did when he was with Minnesota as well.
But just correct me in terms of the detail here, because he could have opted out and become a free agent, but he ended up opting in and signing.
The area where I think he's believing where the lie is happening and why he's calling Morey a liar is that it's basically Morey saying his belief that Morey was going to trade him. So he opted into the contract in order to facilitate the trade. And the fact that LA is not coming back with commiserate value. I think the Sixers have a player in mind that they really want that LA is not including in the deal. Mm-hmm. Morey's doing what he does. And again, at the end of the day, his responsibility is to his employers. Right. And Harden is not getting what he wants. He's being told to come to camp, and he's taking it. This is where if there is a relationship between the general manager and the player, if it is as close as it was, and he's not getting what he wants, this is where Harden, in his entitlement, feels as if the relationship has been broken. This has him making the comment that he made to me is indicative of what he believed was a closer relationship. And the business still has to be business.
There's one other facet of this, and that's the NBA players are on tour in China.
Yes.
He said this in China.
Yes, he did.
Daryl Morey had problems mentioning China.
Oh yeah, because
I don't think that James Harden doesn't remember that.
Yeah, because God forbid, Daryl Morey said something about the freedom movement in Hong Kong against the communist Chinese, and the NBA is in bed with China because they make billions of dollars.
James Harden just happened to mention that while he was in Hong Kong.
Thanks, James.
Maybe a coincidence, probably not.
I've got something that I want to talk about. I watched this morning, obviously, the semifinals of the World Cup, and I noted in social media there was some discussion about the penalties in soccer versus shootout attempts by the NHL. And my take on it is, as much as I've seen, I don't know that I've seen a more pressure-filled situation than the Lillehammer Olympics and that shootout, the Peter Forsberg postage stamp goal when, the veteran players didn't want to do it. The pressure was dripping. You could feel it. It was great. I was saying all that. I just, even though there was discussion about this, I don't think that the pressure of a NHL shootout goal is anything like taking those penalties at the World Cup level. Watching those women today stepping up, knowing in their mind that 70% of their country is watching that on television, back home. Like that's just incredible. The amount of pressure those people face, and you see it in men's, obviously, World Cup as well. But that's just amazing. And the main difference that no one speaks of, in the NHL, the goalie has the advantage. I mean, statistically, that's true. That's not true. Like they expect you to score, in football, soccer, and so the pressure is on the shooter. And as you get deeper into the situation, so I was watching that, and I was almost feeling sorry for everybody who had to take a shot. That's how terrible that was.
Oh, I hearken back to the World Cup last year when obviously I had a rooting interest, and of course, typical of me, my rooting interest was, of course, against one team. I really didn't care that Argentina won. I cared that France lost. That's what I wanted. But the pressure, even just as sort of not really involved in it, but the pressure was palpable. It really was.
What did the French do to you, by the way, Mike?
Oh, I just don't like them. I like
Why?
England.
What did they do to you?
I just want them to like England.
You live for hate.
There's
nothing to you.
We've discussed this before.
Ad nauseum, Kevin.
Mike gets great joy against rooting against people. I think more so than rooting for. Like it's the most oddest thing. I explained Mike to some of my friends, and it's almost like they don't even believe me, like how much he's into rooting against things.
It's hard to go against it because it keeps popping up.
Yeah, I mean, and everything, like, just the way you brought that up. I wasn't rooting for anybody. I was rooting against France.
What?
Yeah.
Like the little ball of hate, I swear.
Yeah. No.
Call me he hate me.
Beat that. It's you.
I'm he hate me. There you go.
Yeah. So.
Mike hate me. I'm going to get a t-shirt.
Mike hate me. Oh, God.
But anyway, just to close out that, for those who, don't care or weren't watching, Australia ended up winning that this morning against, and much to the delight of Michael Jello, I'm assuming, they beat France.
Yes.
So they move on.
That's a win for Mike.
That's a win for me.
And the Australians.
Yes.
So
the Australians, let's not forget them.
Go Kangaroos.
It's funny, though, what you do think of. I'm watching this in the middle of it, and I'm standing in the kitchen. We have a television, on the counter there. And my wife, I turned to my wife and I said, do New Zealanders root for Australia?
No, it's a massive no, it's a rivalry.
That's what I was wondering. I mean, like we talk about, and I'm not sure this is true, but, you hear USA Hockey executives say, we root for Canada except when we're playing for them. I'm not, like I said, I'm less sure that's true with the participants, but that's what they say. So I wondered if that was true for New Zealand, Australia. I simply just don't know. So
no, I was listening to there was a soccer podcast with Rebecca Lowe, and I think it's the guy from the coach from Brendan Hunt from Ted Lasso. They had on Jacinda, the former New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, I think her name is, and that's acknowledged. It's Australia versus New Zealand.
Now I know rivalry. So they go Mike Agello all over those people. So they're rooting against Australia. So all right.
Okay, let's start the show. A little hockey world. Today is Monday, August 14th, 2023, and I hate France.
I'm Anthony Mangione, and I don't hate anybody.
I'm Russ Cohen. I do hate pumpkin spice, and it started. I admit it.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I know Russ Cohen dislikes pumpkin spice. Actually hates pumpkin spice.
Hates it.
And I'm Michael Agello, and everybody in the civilized world knows that Russ hates pumpkin spice. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with the news of the day, which was the expected retirement of David Krejci from the Boston Bruins. I don't think, this is not casting an aspersions. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but he is a very, very good player, a Stanley Cup winner, 16 seasons in the NHL, Ty Anderson, our good friend, former hockey buzzer, let us know that he has the same amount of career points in the playoffs as Bergeron, 128 career points. Second all time. I'm assuming it's Bobby Orr, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm taking a guess there in terms of career points. Maybe somebody can.
I mean, I know Danny Briere's got over 100. He's like 100.
Yeah.
No, second.
Boston.
Boston.
That's Boston. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know who has the most career, but they said they were tied for second. But Kev, I mean, like I said, a very good. I mean, maybe the prototypical number 2 center. A really good offensive player, a perfect complement to Bergeron. In fact, early in the career, I think Krejci was the better offensive guy, and he was the number 1, and Bergeron was the number 2, and then they sort of flip-flopped in the second half of their career.
Yeah, I mean, last season they tried, and David Pastrnak kind of led the charge, trying to get Krejci back, from the Czech Republic, and they had the best season in NHL history, and it wasn't all Pastrnak and Bergeron. There was a lot of Krejci involved in that, and he said you laid it out perfectly. He's a really, really gifted player. Everybody understands what he brings to the table, and they're going to miss him. I mean, we've already started to talk about it. It's hard to know where the Bruins are without Bergeron and Krejci, and they're not far apart in terms of what they bring. I mean, Bergeron is just a little bit higher level because he brings the defensive side of the game into play, and his face-off ability and his leadership, all that. I don't think Krejci, gets anywhere near Bergeron in those categories. But, offensive production and, the kind of symmetry of the offensive attack, Krejci's involved in that. And so they're going to miss him. And I think they all understand that.
Anthony, just one thing, Russ. It was Ray Bourque, 161 points career. And Anthony, I think the memory I will carry about David Krejci most was 2010. The Bruins were up 3-0. I don't remember. Was it Richards that hit him?
I believe it was.
Yeah.
I got to check on that. I believe it was.
Right, and when he got knocked out of the series, and they were up 3-0, that was the turning point, and they lost the next 4 without Krejci.
It was a weird series in that, even in the 3 games, those first 3 games, with the exception of game 3, I think was nip and tuck. First 2 games were certainly nip and tuck.
Right.
But matchup perspective wise, it made things it just made things more simple for Philadelphia. Not with Krejci not being in there, there's no question the impact that, because then the following year we see Krejci against Philadelphia, and Boston dominates Philly in 4. I mean, obviously the added motivation after blowing the series lead, but that the year after, you saw the difference of having a Krejci full tilt in the lineup for Boston. So it's a massive, I think, a massive thing. It was a massive thing for Philly. It was the same thing for me, Mike. I thought about the same, how much of an impact him being out of that series affected Boston during that.
Yeah, I covered that series too, and so that did come to mind. The only reason I don't say they lost the series without Krejci was because, like, guys on the Flyers did step up. Like Simone Gagne really played like the best series of his life too, and so that.
It's a match. I took that more as a matchup thing more than anything. It's simplified some matchups for Philadelphia.
Yeah, there's no question. But it was an odd series. Like, because I remember sitting through all the interviews, and each time the Flyers won a game, I still wasn't sure they were winning this series. I was never sure that they were winning the series until they actually won it. And I think Anthony was right in the sense that it was really close. Like, these 2 teams were really close. The year after, I don't even count that because everything changes with teams. But everything was really close. But it did show his importance, no question. And that's what I was going to say too.
Yeah. Now, just touch on this. I know we touched on this earlier on a previous show, but I have to say right now, with the Bruins, losing Bergeron to retirement, losing Krejci to retirement, you look at their strength up the middle, and that I'm using that loosely, with Pavel Zacha moving to the media. And I like Pavel Zacha as a player. I think that was a really good deal for them. but he, and I know he was drafted as a center, Russ, but I don't know whether he is a center in the NHL now, and especially not a number one center, him being, probably playing with his countryman Pasternak, and then Charlie Coyle, who's played center and wing. I mean, the fact that is their top two centers, and really, unless something happens, like them making a deal for Elias Lindholm, which I'm not going to hold my breath on. They're a bubble team now. I think they're not a lock for a top three in the Atlantic Division, and I think they're in the mix for one of the two wild cards. And until I see otherwise, that's what I'm going to believe.
Yeah, I don't look at them as a playoff team right now. I like Zach. I've trumpeted him from the very beginning, but never saw him as.
I'm not ready to say that they're not a play. I think they're on the verge. I think they're on the bubble. I think they still have the better blue line than a lot of teams in the East. And I think the goaltending.
Their goaltending.
But
they're goaltending. But I'm not. They're not a non-playoff team for me.
I don't think they're a playoff team because those matchups at center, especially in the Atlantic, they're going to get killed on now. Well, they are. And when you get killed up the middle, yes, your defense could be really good, your goaltending could be good, but when you get killed up the middle and you don't have good center play, you're in trouble. At least that's the way I look at it. I don't think they're making the playoffs.
Kev, where I put them in right now is the same category as the Islanders. Their goaltending is good. I think the Islanders' goaltending is better with Sorokin, but their goaltending is good. Ullmark wins the Vezina. Their defense is excellent with McAvoy and Lindholm. But like the question with the Islanders with their offense, now I have to question. I mean, they still have Pasternak. He's one of the best players in the league. And, NHL Network just ranked him as the top winger in the league. But a winger needs a center, needs somebody to feed him the puck.
Yeah, but he creates a lot by himself too. It'll be difficult for him to repeat maybe last year's numbers, but their offense is better than the Islanders' offense, to be sure, and I think their defense is better than the Islanders' defense. Yes. And they get offense out of their defense. But Russ and I always argue about declarative statements. I don't know enough yet to know whether they're going to make the playoffs or not. I think it's fair to wonder whether they will, but if I had to guess, I'm not guessing they're going to be out of the playoffs.
And not to completely, while Russ is not on here, I'm going to say it now. He also was predicting them to not last year when they actually had Bergeron. That was a surprise for everybody. They had the two of them and thought they were on the edge of not making the postseason. Yeah. So.
I mean, but what is true that we can't argue about is that they're a team in transition, and when they've got to sort out how they're going to do this. I've seen people discuss the fact, and there's probably some truth to this, that they'll play differently now. That Montgomery has already been talking about, instead of trying to carry the play against the top two centers on the other team, we're going to be looking to shut them down, and we're going to try to, win, kind of the defensive battle and get our goals that way. I mean, they'll have to adjust, but they're not the same team. That's absolutely the truth, and we're going to have to, see how they play out. But I wouldn't count them out. I just think they have too many other things, and plus, you just don't know what will happen here. In terms of what rabbit they'll pull out of the hat. If somebody gets hurt of significance, which gives them a lot of LTI money, they'll may be able to get a center that will, make a difference for them.
Yeah. While Russ is, I think he's taking a phone call. Anthony, the decision came down from the IIHF, Ivan Fedetov situation, and I mean, I know that saying that he thought that there was a distinct possibility that the IIHF was going to favor the Russians because that's what they sometimes do, but they came out in favor of the Flyers. But the question is, what does it really mean? It seems like a sort of a penalty without teeth. It's like, okay, they've acknowledged that the Flyers contract is the legal contract. Well,
it's not one without teeth for CSKA because of the fact that they're not allowed to do international transfers now until August 10th of next year.
Okay.
They lose a year of being able to bring him in that according to the IIHF. And also, obviously, it affects Fedetov. He's got a 4-month suspension now. He won't be able to play until January 1st of 2020. January 1st. Suspension begins on September 1st. So it has impact. And again, the key element here is I think we're looking, the IIHF is looking at this as he did sign a contract. But listen, photographic evidence was there. He signed a contract with Philadelphia. And this, a couple years back, and it was at the end of the day, it was his ELC, it was a binding contract. Mm-hmm. And, with, CSK, obviously, again, at the end of the day, they made the decision to send him on military duty when he was trying to come over back, So adding to that mix, in many ways, this becomes sort of a situation that CSKA kind of created for themselves and thought that they were going to be able to sign him to a contract and that the IHF was going to be in their favor. They're going to argue it, obviously. We expect over the next week or so that's going to be argued. But I think it's going to be a difficult thing. And I know Valery Kamensky, the president of the Russian Federation, says we should pull out of all IHF. They don't have us in international competitions to begin with anyway. So, I mean, this is the chess. This is bigger than just the Philadelphia Flyers situation here. They are a piece of this. Mm-hmm. And of course that's really, what it's come down to. And I've had some Flyer fans obviously message saying, is this going to affect what's going to happen with Michkov in a few years? And it's like, you're dealing with SKA, you're dealing with CSKA, and, branches of the military, technically, I guess you could say. That's something to consider in this circumstance. But they had the contract. I think the IHF is worried about contracts being signed and then sort of being railroaded. And that's one of the reasons why I think they had him in that circumstance. And the reason why Fedetov was suspended was because he was supposed to give notice of whether or not he was going to honor the contract or not. When he did not and sign the contract, that's what put him under a sanction. And I think he's just a kid who just wants to, at this point now,
he's thrown in the middle.
He just wants to play hot. He just wants to play. He doesn't care. At this point now,
set him up on that, to be honest.
And he knows he's probably in this circumstance, especially after the Flyers signed Kolosov to a 3-year ELC. I mean, the goaltending picture in Philly is cloudy. Even if the Flyers have this thing and say, hey, you still have Hart here. You still have 2 other goaltenders, at least 4. Their goaltending situation is pretty much 4 guys right now at the moment for Philadelphia, with Hart, with Peterson, which is not a small amount of space this takes up there. You have Urson, who they just signed to a 3-year ELC, who start at the end of this one, that 3-year contract. His ELC is done. It's his regular contract. And you got 1 more year of Sandstrom. He's a UFA after this season. So the picture in Philly, it's just, I can see from Fedotov's experience, like, I'm not going to, if I go there, I'm not going to probably play in the NHL. He must obviously play at the pro level. So,
well, in reading the decision, it said that the Flyers could essentially give him his, not essentially a release or an okay, saying, okay, you can go play in Russia. I don't think that there's a distinct possibility that that's going to happen.
No, not now. Now
have friendlies handling it because he says he's on loan. But if you think about it, it's the same thing. Whether the Flyers agree to it or not, he's probably not coming because they're probably not going to allow him to leave. Like, that's at the end of the day, that's what's going to end up.
I think there's also precedent, because if you do sign another player to an ELC in this circumstance and something gets written, you need precedence. Yeah. You're going to need to say again, that's I think one of the biggest issues here is the contracts, the sanctity of the contracts. If you signed it, if it's legally binding, railroading it is.
Yeah, but
and that's basically what CSKA was trying to do here. They basically tried to railroad this and get him through. And
laws in the world and laws in Russia are different.
I'm well aware of that, Russ.
Yeah,
well, I mean, regardless of what the legal ruling was, do you think he feels comfortable with the idea of coming over here? I think not. I mean,
no, I don't think
frankly, so. I'm totally surprised.
Yes,
that the Russians haven't already just divorced themselves from.
I think that's what's happening. I think that's and he's saying what he said. I think that's exactly what's about to happen.
I thought it would have happened a while ago, because let's look at it. What did they really lose? Like, there's not that many Russians that come over here anymore. Not relatively speaking. Like, I remember doing a story 4 or 5 years ago when there was only 27 Russians playing in the NHL. I think it's higher than that now, but we can look real quick. But it's not much higher. Russians tend to stay over and play in the KHL unless they're really, really, really good.
Right.
Then they want to come over here and measure up. So, for Russia, and then the other issue is there, there could be some transfer issues for the North Americans they want to bring into the KHL, but there's really, there are more of them than there are of, I think, Russians coming over here, but they could live without them as well. And some would come anyway. If they don't have a chance to ever play in international hockey, in a tournament,
then they do it anyhow.
Yeah, what do they care? Whether or not their transfer is sanctioned. So I'm frankly surprised that they just haven't said, you're not getting our players. We're not having any transfer agreements. We're going to operate over here. You operate over there.
Say that soon, though, because there is no transfer agreement. Now, again, just so Flyers fans understand, even if they say that, if a team like the Flyers has a good agreement, like with the team that Michkov is at, they'll let him go. When the time is right, they'll let him go.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's probably what's going to happen. The Flyers are looking at it from an asset management perspective, that his rights could be at value.
Well, if there's no agreement, money talks.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what'll happen.
Yeah, and it's all, like you said, it's all complicated by the fact, there's an agreement between the NHL and the SHL, between the NHL and Liga. But, with almost it's only the KHL that there is no agreement with. And, that's, I think mostly on the part of the KHL, that they just don't want it. The Flyers really, Anthony, their perspective on this, I think, has to have changed with the selection of Michkov, because now it's like, okay, we've got our goaltending taken care of the next couple of years with the extension with Urson. It's like, okay, Fedetov wants to stay over there, fine. We want Michkov.
And again, you have to also put in Kolosov in the mix too, that they signed to an ELC and are letting him play the first year of this ELC on loan to Minsk.
Right.
And so it means he'll be in year 2 of his ELC when he finally does come to North America, if he does.
So they have a good agreement with Minsk, so there's no reason to believe Minsk is going to all of a sudden change their minds or go back on it. That's why they picked that.
Unless, again, it comes down to the Russian Hockey Federation. Right. It comes down to how much of a hard line. And I do think this is going to be I do believe these situations are going to be individualized and compartmentalized between the teams. So I guarantee you, Philly and Ska, when it comes to Michkov, are I think they have to have a clear line, a fairly clear idea of where things are there, because otherwise you took a massive risk in taking him 7th overall, and you're willing to kind of play the long game with him to begin with. So I think it's this reads as sort of an individualized. These are all going to be sort of individualized situations here.
So Randy has updated us. There's 57 Russians. Remember last, like 2 months ago, a lot of Russians were released from their contracts in the KHL, and they came over here. And so there was a big influx recently.
Right.
Russ, 57 Russians, but I'm looking here, and about 32 of them played 50 or more games.
Okay.
So, there just isn't that many. I think we could end up going back to the kind of the Wild West where we
Iron Curtain style. Yeah.
Yeah. Where you made a cut a deal with their team, and you bring the guy over and all that kind of stuff.
We're not going to go to we're not going to get to Defectionville, but
I say you never know, but probably not. But you never know. Like, this is a weird world we live in.
Yes, the role of Alexander McGillney is now being played by Matvei Michkov. Tomorrow is the 15th of August, and anybody who has watched Hockey Buzz over the years knows that is a big day, because that is the day when college free agents who were drafted, or college players who were drafted, who after their senior year can become unrestricted free agents. Everybody remembers Jimmy Vesey a few years ago, and the hubbub that brought about. He didn't turn out to be the player that everybody thought he was, but he's still an NHL player. Russ, I know that you wrote for Full Press about 5 college players, one of them being John Farinacci, but tell us a little bit about those players.
Yeah, so Farinacci's the big name because the reason the Coyotes drafted him in the 3rd round is because they were unsure if he would actually play for them, because, again, he was a talented kid. And they were like, all right, look, he's on our board. We might as well do it. That's probably what the thinking was. But there was always this thought that maybe he wasn't going to do that. He's had a great career at Harvard. I mean, a great career. ECAC champion. He's won a gold medal with the U.S. World Junior team, was a factor in that. So, he played with Caulfield and those guys. Even Bobby Brink of the Flyers was on that team. So really, really skilled guy. He could play center or wing. And so, my first thought was, a team like the Bruins might want to go after him because he went to Dexter. He played at Harvard. And, you take him, you throw him in camp. If he doesn't completely wow you in camp, you let him play a little while in the AHL, and he could maybe help solve your center problem. So I looked at them first for a guy because I think he's the best of the bunch. I think he could actually legitimately play third line in the NHL. And so we'll see. We'll see if that happens. Jay O'Brien was a Flyers first rounder. Obviously, he is not going to sign with them, and they don't want him. So he had a good career at BU. Now, he's a guy who I think could be an NHL depth player. Also a center. Also, like people like Ty have told me that Don Sweeney likes to collect former first rounders. I don't put that kind of value on somebody like just because Farinacci's a third rounder and O'Brien's a first rounder. I don't think O'Brien's better. I think Farinacci's better, but I do understand where clubs sort of like go with this. Hey, he's a first rounder. We'll give him a shot. So it's another guy who could play center, and you wonder if the Bruins will look at that simply because they're in need of centers. Another interesting, and I said the Rangers too for Jay O'Brien because of the BU connection. They always seem to have that. Johnny Tyconic, Mike is familiar with him because he got signed last year to the ECHL, to an ECHL deal by Kyle Dubas. Played the whole year with the Growlers. Had a really good year. I mean, excellent year. More than a point a game in the playoffs. He was a guy that Ottawa drafted, and for some reason, I always felt like Ottawa felt like he was going to be a big scorer, and he's really not a big scorer. He's one of those defensemen that can play fast. He's not overly physical, but he's 6 foot. He'll use his size a little bit, whatever he can. He'll give lay a hit or two. But I always felt like they thought he was going to be an offensive, a potent offensive player, and when he wasn't, sort of didn't have interest in him because they had other defensemen that did that, at least 2. So I said, all right, like I get that. But he does manage to get points because, again, he's just, knows how to move the puck and play quick hockey. And so in the NHL, I think he could be a depth defenseman. And I said, even though he's signed with the Marlies right now to an AHL deal, if a team signed him to, an ELC, they could trump that if they wanted to. And the way defensemen, there's a shortage of defensemen in the league, it makes me wonder. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it makes me wonder. Jake Wise is a real interesting one. He's a guy who was with the NTDP, a center, also, can play wing. He's probably a guy that'll play wing because he's 5'11", and I don't think he's the best at faceoffs. He's good, but not the best. Because Charlotte took a chance on him after his 5th year last year with Ohio State, he had a really good year. And he did well. They had one game, he had like 2 points. It makes me think Florida may want to sign him simply because they do need to replenish their system. Even if he never makes it to the NHL, they still need to replenish their system. But, another thought was I could see the Sharks going after him because Wise really liked playing for David Quinn. David Quinn is over there, and the Sharks need as many good young players as they can too. And Quinn might be able to get him to the NHL because he's a guy who could play, 4th line even in the NHL if he can make it. So that's another one. And then the last one is Jared Moe. He's a 6'4" goalie. He's only, he's 24. For me, I say only 24 as a goalie because I've seen goalies at 25, 26 do something. And I'm thinking, I think someone's going to sign him. He's an American goalie. Wisconsin had problems. Like he had problems there, but he was good in Minnesota as a backup. And I look at him and I watch some film on him. And according to Instat, he was 91% on breakaways, which is pretty good. I noticed he sometimes overplayed the puck. But I also noticed that the defense was sometimes standing around for Wisconsin too. And so I just think, if a team wants to bring in another goalie, they might do that. Now that one, I have no idea. I was guessing like the Blackhawks or maybe the Avalanche, because those are organizations that could use extra goaltending depth. But I'm looking at those guys as just guys that we might hear their names. I think Farinacci is going to be the one we're going to hear pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, with goaltenders, I mean, I remember the whole, Ben Bishop thing. He played 3 years at Maine. He didn't really establish himself in the NHL until he was 27.
Yeah.
He played some years in the AHL, but yeah, the window in terms of age for goaltenders, because they can play into their mid to late 30s if they stay healthy. So, 24 is not too old, but yeah, the Farinacci thing. I mean,
He's
it's
22 Farinacci. I didn't mention that. So
yeah, no, I mean the Farinacci thing will be interesting because every team needs centers. So, it's just a question of where the best opportunity is. Now, I don't know if this is true, but somebody in the chat said, he thinks that Ottawa's going to sign Farinacci because apparently his sister is married to Brady Tkachuk. So if
that's a possibility.
If that's the case, then yeah.
That's something I'm unaware of, but hey, if he wants to go to Ottawa, he'll go there. But I think he's going to, again, he grew up in New Jersey, I think, but he really lived in Boston. He went to school there, Dexter, and then Harvard. Right. I think if the Bruins came calling, I think he would still want to play for the Bruins more than he'd want to play for Ottawa. I could be wrong, but I know a lot of these college guys all want to play for the Bruins.
I think there's a bit too much inference. I think there's an assumption and inference there in terms of him going to Ottawa because it's whoever's going to offer the best opportunity.
Right. It's going to be who offers the Schedule A, Schedule B bonus, who offers the 2-year contract instead of the 3-year contract. Yeah, or
that's
the one, maybe even a 1 year.
I didn't know, so that's.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true. I'm just saying something. Okay, let's finish off with our summer game that we mentioned on Off the Post, and we will touch on this occasionally throughout the summer because it's and we're getting to the point now where it's the middle of August. The training camps start the middle of September.
We're officially in Judge Judy tapping the watch.
Right.
And we saw the 2-year contract with Pius Suter, and essentially that might be the last multi-year contract that any unrestricted free agent gets in this market.
Let Kevin comment on that because he
please.
said at least 4 times that Suter should be signed, and we talked about it. Kev, he finally
he's a good player, very good two-way player. He's played 3 years in the NHL and had 14 or 15 goals all 3 seasons. Very good player. The Red Wings actually wanted him back, but didn't want to give him 2 years. Only wanted to give him 1, and he wanted 2. But to get that 2, he had to take a major haircut. He was making 3.2 on average on a 2-year deal with the Wings. He got 3.2 for both years with the Canucks. So, just the money just wasn't out there. He's smallish, and the Red Wings wanted to get a little bigger. But, very well, like coaches love him just because he can play third line, he can play fourth line, he can play second line. They slot him in the first line. He can kill penalties. His analytics, what's really remarkable on him is when he's on the ice, the other team just doesn't get shots. He's a real puck possession guy. He can hang on to the puck. He can defend well. So this is a nice pickup for Vancouver. And I think the Red Wings, knew what they were losing, would have liked to have kept him, but it just didn't work for them with everything they had. So this is a good deal. And, I'm sure this is disappointing for them to, have to, take less money because he's a pretty valuable player. I mean, to get that many goals on a team that didn't score a lot of goals, was not among the top scoring teams, like that's pretty significant.
We have some breaking news here. Pretty bad. Go ahead, Mike. I'll let you do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is really sad, and especially in Rodion Amirov, who was the Leafs' first-round pick in 2020, when the news came out, I think it was about 18 months ago, that he had a brain tumor. I mean, I think everybody realized that his hockey career was over with, but the hope was that they had caught it early enough that they could, shrink the tumor enough that they could surgically remove it. Well, Daniel Milstein, his agent, just revealed on social media that he has passed away at the age of 22. And it's just, I mean, really, it's an absolute tragedy. I mean, somebody that young, somebody with that ability, but just,
a lot.
I mean, he could have been a very, who knows how good of a hockey player he could have been, but that really is secondary. He was a young guy, he was a loving son. His parents must be absolutely devastated right now. It's really, really sad. And, I wish send out my condolences to his family. And, it's just really, really terrible. All right. let's try, we'll try to finish off on a lighter note, obviously. Here we'll start. Okay. I won't include Thomas Tatar because there is a rumor out there that Thomas Tatar is in talks with the Pittsburgh Penguins on a 1-year deal, which I think would be a pretty good signing, Kev, because he scored 20 goals last year with the Devils. And, he's not getting a multi-year deal, but if he can sign on with a team like Pittsburgh, who, has, championship aspirations after the addition of Erik Karlsson, he played 82 games for New Jersey. He didn't play particularly well in the playoffs, but I think that'll be a good signing if Pittsburgh does get him on a sort of veteran minimum or close to veteran minimum deal. But I won't include him. But we'll start with Josh Bailey, who was traded by Lou Lamoriello and then bought out, I think, by Vancouver. He's an unrestricted free agent at this point. The options are, will he get a 1-year contract? Will he get a PTO, which is a training camp invite, or neither? Nada. So we'll start with you, Kevin. 1-year contract, PTO, or nada for Josh Bailey?
PTO. I think he's been around long enough that he'll be able to cut some deal to get to the training camp to show people what he could do. Maybe he's been working out this summer and in the best shape of his career, one of those kind of things.
We're getting close to those times.
Yep.
Anthony?
I agree with Kevin. I think he's got enough of a track record that he'll be able to garner a PTO, but not a 1-year deal.
Russ?
Yeah, PTO. He's a two-way player. Even if he's not scoring much, he penalty kills. There's value there.
Yeah, I agree. I actually heard some rumors about Toronto and a PTO with him, but I'm sure there's other options out there. He only scored 8 goals last year, so he isn't the player that he was 2 or 3 years ago, but that's why he's getting a PTO instead of a 1-year contract. Let's see here. Let's go. Okay. How about Jesse Puljujarvi? Now here's the thing with him. Oh, obviously former top 5 overall pick of the Edmonton Oilers. It didn't work there. Was traded to Carolina. Carolina didn't qualify him. I believe he had double hip surgery.
Yeah.
So, any signing here would be, okay, we sign him to a 1-year deal, but we're not expecting to get him back until February or March. To me, I'll make my guess. I don't think anybody is taking a chance on him until they can see if he can skate, see if he's healthy enough. So I'm saying nada on Jesse Puljujarvi. Hey, Kev?
Yep, I'm with you. No, nothing for him.
Nothing here, but if he can show at some point through workouts or anything along those lines where scouts can get on him and get an idea of where he's at, then potentially he might be able to garner an offer in season. But as of right now, no offer.
Russ?
Yeah, I'm going to say nada, and I'm going to say he may end up having to go elsewhere, like to another league somewhere else to prove himself. I don't think
maybe back in Liga. He might have to go back to Liga.
He might have to go do that.
Play half a year in Liga, and then you prove you're healthy, and then he gets a contract over here.
Yeah.
Okay, Nick Ritchie, former Leaf, former Calgary Flame, former Arizona Coyote, had 13 goals last year. Big body.
Bruin too. I think we have in the mix there somewhere.
Yeah,
was he Bruin as well? Yeah.
Yeah, Bruins. That's right. Anaheim. There he was a former first-round pick of the Ducks. Yeah. Big body. So if a team is looking for some snarl, that might be somebody that they'd be interested in. But Anthony, we'll start with you. 1-year contract, PTO or nada?
He's somewhere between PTO and nada, I think. Even with size and everything, he's been around a lot at this point now. I'm going to say somebody's going to – I'll be nice. I'll give him a PTO. Somebody gives him a PTO because of the size. Somebody look at him and say, we'll give him a shot, but not a guaranteed deal. We'll see how he does and how he grabs onto our lineup.
Don Cherry would be pissed at you because he thought the Leafs should take him over William Nylander. Kevin, PTO, nada, 1-year contract, Nick Ritchie?
I think I'm going to give him a tryout as well. The only problem is he's had looks and it just has never worked out. He just has not been the player they want him to be. So, I think there's a reluctance that it's time to kind of just move on. But someone will take a look at him just because he has all those ingredients you mentioned, including the physical play.
Russ?
I'm going to say nada because the speed's not there and the defense isn't there. He's had some bad defensive moments where I think some teams
he's not reliable. Yeah, that's the thing. You're looking at him, you say he may not be reliable. If you're playing him and say your bottom lines, you
Right.
need some reliability there.
Correct.
And that's why that's the reason why I was kind of in between.
Yeah. I get it.
Why I went PTO.
Ironically, the team I think that he could get the best chance of getting an NHL deal with is the team that drafted him, because they went out and they signed Killorn, they signed Gudas because they want big bodies to protect their young guys. But I don't know whether, and it's a different administration. It's Verbeek. It's not Bob Murray. But I'm thinking it's a PTO at best. And I'm sort of going like here, and it's probably nada, but I think somebody will give him a look. Now Ethan Bear, only 26 years old. I know that there's a major injury there. I think it's knee. And I think the expectation is he's not going to be available until after the All-Star break. But this is a right-hand shot defenseman, and not a bad defenseman if he's healthy. So I'll make the prediction. I think somebody is going to take the risk and sign him on a one-year deal and then put him on LTIR until he's ready to play. Anthony, one-year contract, PTO or nada?
Tough one there because I like Bear in certain spots. He went to Carolina. I thought that was going to be a good place for a good role for him, and it didn't work out there. I think he's bounced around enough to the point now where teams maybe there's conversations going around there that they're not 100% sure on him. I think he gets a PTO. I think he's looking well again. If he's got his injury and everything, he can't get a PTO. So yeah, maybe nothing until teams get a look at him.
Russ?
Yeah, I think someone will give him a one-year deal because he is a living, breathing NHL defenseman with a pulse. And these days, everybody wants depth. I think somebody will take a chance.
Kev?
I just don't think they'll want to pay him the half year. So I think they're going to wait.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little surprised, Russ, that Tyler Mott is still a UFA.
It is surprising.
Yeah, I mean, especially after the fact that he, was reacquired by the Rangers. Now the Rangers don't have a lot of cap space, but do you think he gets a one-year contract, PTO?
Yes. I think he gets a one-year contract because I think he is the kind of guy that's going to squeak in at the last minute when somebody
gets dinged.
Maybe a week or two into camp, and they're like, get Tyler Mott.
Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder again. We talk about how he got reacquired by New York, so I think New York acquired him with the hope that he was going to be helpful in the postseason. Nobody was helpful. Nobody was helpful. So, in that but I agree with Russ. I think he will definitely be in someone's camp. I don't know about him. He may start off with a PTO, and then there's an injury, and then someone snaps him up at 1 year.
Right. Kev?
I think, usually with the PTO, it's a question of whether he's still an NHLer. I don't think there's any question about him. I think he's going to get signed.
All right, I'm going to eliminate one of the categories here, and we're going to do a lightning round here, 3 players. And the reason I'm eliminating the PTO is because I cannot conceive of the 3 names that I'm mentioning taking a PTO because they're veteran players, and if a team isn't willing to commit a 1-year deal, I think they're going to tell those teams to stick it. Number 1, Paul Stastny, 1-year contract or nada? Kevin?
1-year contract.
Okay. Russ?
Yeah, veteran center, still can do things, 1-year contract.
Anthony?
Yeah, he's got enough of a track record. I can get a 1-year deal.
I think 1-year contract. Phil Hot Dog Kessel. Anthony, 1-year contract or nada?
1-year contract from somebody.
Russ?
1-year contract with Arizona.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Bingo!
Right? Yeah, I'm going back. I'm
right out of my mouth.
I'm back in Arizona. So
I think he's going to that great
desert dog, literally.
Great Frankfurt. Yeah. Frankfurt's sausage maker in this
dog.
Picture.
There you go.
Okay.
A little mustard on that shot.
and last but not least, Jonathan Taves, 1-year contract or retirement? Anthony?
Retirement.
Russ?
I'm going to say retirement because I think Winnipeg would have already signed him.
Yeah.
I didn't even hear the name you said. I'm sorry.
Jonathan Taves.
Jonathan Tay's retirement.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not bringing up Patrick Kane because I think he's going to play.
He's going to get signed at some point.
Yes.
Somebody's going to sign him at some point. Exactly.
It's going to be a Matt Sundin. It's going to be a 1-year contract halfway through the season. But yeah, so all right, great job, guys. We'll be back. I'm not sure when, but we'll be back the next time for the Hockey Buzzcast for Kevin Allen, for Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.